30 years. That's how long I gave this company. 30 years of loyalty, of sleepless nights, of missed birthdays and abandoned vacations, and in the end, I was replaced by a kid who'd never broken a sweat for this place. They thought I'd leave quietly, fade into the background like a piece of outdated office furniture. What they didn't know was that the CEO's own signature had already handed me the power to burn his entire empire to the ground. As I sat in that boardroom watching them celebrate my replacement, I smiled, because buried deep inside the contracts he'd signed without reading was a clause that would cost him everything. $800 million worth of patents, and every single one of them was about to belong to me. My name is Natalie, and after 3 decades of building Adrian Technologies from the ground up, they decided I was disposable. The mahogany conference table reflected the cold fluorescent lights as I watched Richard Callahan, the CEO I'd saved from bankruptcy more times than I could count, avoid my eyes. The rest of the board suddenly found their phones fascinating. Coffee cups. Notepads. Anything except looking at me. The silence felt heavy, almost suffocating. Natalie, Richard finally said, his voice wrapped in that polished corporate sympathy I'd heard him use on others for years, you've been an invaluable asset to Adrian. Your contributions over the past 30 years have been substantial. Substantial. 30 years of my life reduced to one empty word. However, he continued, and there it was, the word that erased everything that came before it, we're moving in a new direction. The board believes fresh perspectives are needed in systems architecture. Effective immediately, your position will be filled by Evan Callahan. Evan. His son. 24 years old. Fresh out of an MBA program his father paid for. Sitting across from me with a grin he didn't even bother hiding. His tailored suit and perfect haircut couldn't hide the fact that he wouldn't know the difference between a server rack and a shoe rack. This was a fresh perspective, replacing 30 years of institutional knowledge. I felt the anger rise, hot and sharp, but my face stayed calm. Corporate warfare teaches you one thing fast. The first person to show emotion loses. My hands rested steady on the table while my mind screamed. I understand, I said evenly. And my severance package? Richard slid a folder toward me. Standard terms. 2 weeks of pay for every year of service. We've also included a non-compete clause. I'll have my attorney review it, I replied as I stood up. The room seemed to exhale in relief. They thought this was over. Evan stood too and extended his hand. No hard feelings, right? Just business. I looked at his hand, then at his eyes. Of course, I said, not shaking it. Just business. The walk to the elevator felt endless. Every wall held memories. Product launches. Crisis meetings where I was the only one who knew how to fix what was broken. Nights when this building had been more home than my actual home. Sandra from accounting passed me in the hallway, her eyes widening in shock. Word hadn't spread yet, but it would. By lunchtime, everyone would know that Natalie, the woman who built their digital backbone, had been replaced by the boss's son. My phone buzzed as I reached my office. A LinkedIn notification. Evan had already posted. Thrilled to announce my new role as head of systems architecture at Adrian Technologies, excited to lead next-generation innovation. He hadn't even waited for me to leave the building. I packed slowly. Methodically. The photo from my daughter's graduation that I'd missed because of a server outage. The coffee mug from our first successful product launch. The framed patent certificates, 58 of them, my name listed as primary architect. My fingers lingered on the last frame, and a quiet smile crossed my face. Richard thought he was careful. Thought he was smart with contracts. But over the years, he'd gotten lazy. He trusted me to handle the technical documentation. He signed whatever I put in front of him, especially during crises, when panic replaced diligence. Like 3 years earlier, when our entire Eastern European operation nearly collapsed overnight. $800 million in transactions frozen. Partners threatening to pull out. Richard had called me at 1:15 a.m., panic cracking through his voice. Natalie, we're finished. The board's talking bankruptcy. I drove through a blizzard that night, nearly sliding off the highway twice. I worked 72 straight hours on coffee and pure stubbornness, rewriting code, negotiating with partners in broken German and fractured Mandarin, rerouting data through servers that weren't designed to handle that load. I collapsed at my desk at one point, and security tried to call an ambulance. I refused. When the systems finally came back online and the monitors glowed green, Richard actually cried. He grabbed my shoulders and said, "You saved us. You saved everything." That's when I drafted the new licensing agreements. Protection against corporate espionage, I told him. He signed at 2:30 in the morning without reading a word. Buried on page 47 was a simple clause. If the primary systems architect was terminated without cause, all patents and licensing rights reverted to the original inventor. Me. They never defined without cause. They never imagined they'd fire me. As I carried my box to the elevator, no one from the board came to say goodbye. No thank you. No acknowledgement of the years I'd given them. But that was fine. They'd remember me soon enough. When the elevator doors closed, my 30-year career at Adrian ended. When they opened in the lobby, something else began. That night, I sat alone in my apartment overlooking Manhattan. The wine on the table went untouched. I finally let the tears fall, not from sadness, but from pure, crystallized rage. 30 years. I traced the number on the fogged window. Memories came fast and sharp. My first day at Adrian, when it was 12 people in a warehouse and Richard promised we'd change the world. The night my marriage ended because I chose a server crisis over dinner, and Richard told me the company was my real family. I opened my laptop and accessed the folder I'd kept for 3 years. Copies of every signed agreement. Every patent filing. Every licensing dependency tied to my work. 58 innovations worth $800 million. My phone buzzed. A text from Maya, head of operations. "This is insane. Evan doesn't know what he's doing." Then another from Marcus, our chief engineer. "Natalie, please tell me you have a plan." I smiled for the first time that day. They thought they'd fired an employee. They'd actually unleashed their worst nightmare. And this was only the beginning. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise, not because of an alarm, but because my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Messages. Missed calls. Notifications stacking on top of each other like falling dominoes. I didn't answer any of them. I made coffee, stood by the window, and watched the city wake up, calm and indifferent, while a billion-dollar company began to choke on the absence of one person it had taken for granted. By 9 a.m. Maya called again. I answered this time. "They didn't revoke your access," she whispered, half laughing, half horrified. "Evan was supposed to do it. He didn't know how." I opened my laptop and logged in. 17 critical systems still showed my credentials as active. Authentication servers. Supplier gateways. Compliance dashboards. Everything I used to quietly manage behind the scenes. I took a breath. "I'm not touching anything," I said calmly. "I'm just going to stop fixing what they break." That was all it took. By day 3, the first cracks appeared. A German supplier refused to release $80 million worth of components because the biometric verification hadn't been completed. Evan missed the call. It was 3 a.m. New York time. He didn't even know the supplier existed. In the emergency meeting that followed, he demanded someone just override it. Maya reminded him overrides required the system's architect's credentials. Mine. Canada followed. A data facility locked itself into restricted mode when the weekly security check didn't happen. I'd been doing that every Sunday morning for years. Unpaid. Undocumented. Singapore was next. Shipping costs tripled because the daily verification sequence wasn't completed. Evan asked if restarting the internet would fix it. That was the moment I knew the collapse wasn't just possible. It was inevitable. Richard called me. I let it go to voicemail. Then again. Then a text. Natalie, we're experiencing some technical disruptions. Perhaps we can discuss a consulting arrangement. I replied with one sentence. My rate is $50,000 per day, minimum 30 days, paid upfront. He accused me of extortion. I answered, it's business. You taught me that. Inside Adrian, panic spread. Slack channels turned into digital screaming matches. Senior engineers quit. Clients demanded explanations no one could give. Evan tried to lead meetings with slides full of buzzwords and zero substance. During a $50 million pitch, he confidently claimed our platform used blockchain. The client's CTO pulled up an article I'd written years earlier explaining why blockchain would never work for that system. The room went silent. The deal died on the spot. By the end of the second week, resignations flooded HR as stock analysts started asking questions. An anonymous post appeared online detailing Evan's incompetence line by line. It went viral. So did the hashtag asking for me to come back. Richard lost control of the narrative. The real explosion came on a Sunday night. The patent reversion clause leaked. Every signature. Every page. Page 47 circled in red. Headlines hit within hours. Tech CEO gives away $800 million in patents. The most expensive nepotism hire in history. By morning, the stock opened down 23%. By lunch, it was down 35%. Richard held a press conference. His hands shook as he denied everything. Reporters asked if he'd read the contracts before signing. He couldn't answer. Someone asked why his son was qualified. Someone else read Evan's resume out loud. The conference ended in chaos. The board panicked. Emergency meetings. Legal teams in full meltdown. Lawyers confirmed what I already knew. The clause was airtight. The patents were mine. All of them. And without them, Adrian was nothing but a logo and a lease. Richard tried everything. Offers. Threats. Emotional appeals. He sent people I cared about to guilt me. I didn't budge. You didn't just fire me, I told him on the one call I finally took. You erased the only thing holding your company together. The board voted him out 2 days later. Unanimously. His resignation letter admitted everything. Termination without cause. Nepotism. Failure of oversight. It leaked within minutes. The market reacted instantly. Trading was halted twice as the stock collapsed. Employees walked out carrying boxes while news cameras rolled. Clients terminated contracts in bulk. Credit agencies downgraded them to junk. 3 days later, Adrian filed for bankruptcy. Chapter 11. A billion-dollar empire reduced to court filings and empty offices. I watched it all from my apartment, silent. No cheering. No celebration. Just a deep, quiet sense of finality. 6 weeks later, I stood on the same balcony with a glass of wine in my hand. The first licensing payment had cleared that morning. More money than I'd made in years. Companies that once ignored me were now bidding for access to the technology they'd mocked. Former employees landed better jobs. The good ones always do. Richard disappeared. Evan took a job far away from boardrooms and titles. And me? I didn't rebuild Adrian. I didn't go back. I didn't need to. I built something new, on my terms, with contracts that respected the people who actually did the work. The lesson wasn't revenge. It was value. Know it. Protect it. Demand it. Because loyalty without respect isn't loyalty. It's exploitation. And systems, like companies, always collapse when the people who understand them are treated as replaceable. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt overlooked, undervalued, or pushed aside despite everything you gave, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share your experience. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more real stories about power, betrayal, and what happens when competence finally fights back.